All right, guys, listen, I wanted to come on here really quick to clarify a post that I made on Facebook. And I'm going to let me find it right here, right quick, because I'm gonna pull it up. But I'm going to discuss or respond to some of the comments in this Facebook post that I posted up. Some of the comments is way off topic. I put a post up about one topic, and it's a lot of comments in there. I guess in regards to the video that I used inside the post, and that video. Let me see here, so I can go to some of the comments in the comment section and respond to those. All right, here we go. So this post I put up, I said some of the greatest warriors can be found in the most humble places. That is the post that I posted up. Some of the greatest warriors can be found in the most humble places, right? I didn't say some of the greatest warriors can only be found in the most humble places. I said some of the greatest warriors can be found in the most humble places. If you have been out, if you have been in this sport long enough, I'm talking about even back with the legal days, if you live in an illegal country or in illegal days, or in the countries that is still continue to be legal. What's up, Chino? Those, what I meant by that is exactly what I know. Some of the best birds are found in the most humble places. I didn't say they only found in the humble places. Guys had comments, and it was a lot of comments, 85 comments on his post, right? From why the birds are not fighting through the cages, what's those blocks that's in the cage, you're wrong because the greatest words are not found in the most humble places. It was topics, I mean comments all over the place. Some of them I didn't even understand how that even related to the topic. But this is the first thing I want to address. So Corey, this is the first thing I want to address. The first thing I want to address is this. I know that in other countries where people have tie cords and big pens and big landscape and all that, that the comments was, well, why is the birds not fighting through the cages, right? Firstly, there's a gap in between. You can't really see it through the camera, but there's a gap in between the cages, right? So I put that in the comment section. So guys replies, well, even if it was a gap, my birds will still fight through the cage. No problem. They probably would. But my response to that is, don't mistake aggression with quality. Dunhills fight through cages. Dunhills, let me repeat that. Dunhills will fight through a cage. So don't confuse aggression with quality. The second thing is many of these birds are raised in these cages in the environments where there's only 4 to 6 inches of space in between them. That's normal. You know what I mean? They're growing up in an environment like that. If you've been to Puerto Rico, there's no question of the quality of birds. But yet they're being raised in a cage with a 4 inches space between them. So 4 inches of space is not a determining factor of nothing. If you know about the quality of birds in Puerto Rico, quality is not, I'm not saying everybody got good birds, but they're known to have good quality birds. They're also known to be raised in cages where 4 inches of space is in between them. So just because they're not fighting through the cage, that is not a determining factor in anything. So that's number one. The second thing is a Dunhill will fight through a cage, and it doesn't determine the quality. He's still a Dunhill, regardless if he fight through the cage or not. He's still a Dunhill. The third thing is birds are raised, unlike in other places where birds are raised on tie cords. They got a lot of space between them. They got a lot of space between them. And then again, some of them don't have a lot of space between them. I have been to places where, spaces are not that big and nobody's fighting through the cage. And then I have been to places where you have to put something in between them. In between them. So don't determine the quality of a bird. Don't think your bird is any better than somebody else's bird because your bird will fight through a cage. Let's see here. Uh-oh. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So my I thought my sound went out. I don't know if it went out or not. But I'm hoping that that explains that. The other thing I wanted to talk about in the post is the little blocks that you see inside those pins. They're pieces of treated 2x4, and the birds roost on that at night. So they're totally comfortable. The birds that I posted are in training. If you look at them, they look completely healthy. They look good. They're trimmed and everything. There's nothing to find. I mean, I'm sure somebody can look at it and find something wrong. Well, nobody said anything about the birds. They just said stuff about the cages, about this, that, all this other stuff. So again, those birds are in training. That's where they stay. The small blocking you see is their perch. And again, I talked about this before, and it was great that an individual, um, Alan, you're exactly right. You're exactly right, Alan. Alan said that a bird can fight through a cage, and then let me put this up on the screen because some of these guys are confused. They think because they birds will fight through a cage that means something. Doesn't mean anything. Just means that your bird will fight through the cage. But Alan is exactly right. A bird can fight through a cage, and then in the moment of truth, end up running. You never know. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, what's up, Jeremy? So that was the thing. Cages, the small blocks are their perches. Uh, Puerto Rican birds are raised in that type of environment. A lot of them, they raised on ground pins as well. They raised on ground. They raised up in the air as well. Both ways are very very common. Um, some birds need to have a something between them. Some birds don't. Some birds will get used to the next bird being over there and not have a problem. But again, it's always space between them. They can't physically touch. They can't stick their head through the fence to grab nothing, so they can't really touch. And I think sometimes people don't understand that chickens is not as dumb as you think they are. They kind of realize over time that they can't get to that bird that's next to them, so they don't keep trying to fight through the cage. That's another thing. I think sometimes we don't give birds as much credit as it should have. They're not as dumb as people think. I have seen the same thing with game dogs. I have seen the same thing with people in small yards that have stuff on tie cords. The cords ain't nothing but 4 to 6 inches. The end of both of those tie cords ain't nothing but between 4 to 6 inches in space in smaller yards. I don't see them constantly at the end of that tie cord banging it. I don't. So what is the difference? There is none. Um, yes. This is another great thing. Zeke said the problem is a lot of these guys have zero idea about Puerto Rican fowl. This miseducation causes them to make ignorant comments. Zeke, you're exactly right. And that's exactly why I'm making this video because what you just said. That's exactly right. I agree with it 100%. Also, too, guys, and refers back to another comment that a guy made about in Louisiana, how he's seen multiple birds. What's up, Parker? You always on your daddy's Facebook. So is a comment that a guy said that he was down in Louisiana. He's seen 5 ASIL crosses. Owner feed them all in the same pen or same area, and he said the next day he went 5 straight. He said if he didn't see it, he would never believed it. This is one thing I would like to share, and you can apply this universal principle to other aspects of your life. The more you stay out your comfort zone, the more you learn. We all creatures of habit. We all creatures of habit. If you didn't know, if you never been to Mexico, if you never been to the Philippines, if you never been to Hawaii, if you never been to Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, if you never been to any of these other places, India, Indonesia, all of Japan, if you've never been to any of these other places, they will do things that to you don't make any sense. That's just the truth. And you can always determine, in many cases, you can always determine a guy's exposure either by his comments or his questions that he asks. Um, you can only learn so much through media, whether it's TV media, social media, any kind of media, YouTube media, regardless of, you can only learn so much. Being entrenched in a culture or in an environment or amongst particular friends or in a particular place can never be replaced by media. I talked about this in doing farm visits. Why you should try to visit many farms and pick up your fowl. Not because you don't trust the individual that you're buying the fowl from, not because you don't trust them. It's because you will come up with questions that you would never have came up with if you only communicated with that individual through some form of media. That's why I encourage that. And how do I know? Because by me doing many, 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 many farm visits, I stumble across stuff. I see stuff that I would never have seen if I only communicated with that individual through some form of media. So that goes back to what I'm saying. If you never competed in Mexico, you never raised fowl in Mexico, stop critiquing how they do things in Mexico. You know what I mean? Because it just makes you sound, it makes you sound, and I hate to say, because ignorant is not a bad word, but I think using ignorant sometimes give individuals more credit. You call yourself being condescending or sarcastic, but at the end of the day, you make yourself look like a fool to the individuals that's living in that country because you don't have the slightest idea how things are in that country. And you're making a comment from another country based upon your experience in your country, which it doesn't make any sense where you live at. But in Mexico, it makes all the sense in the world because you're not looking at the backstory behind it. You see what I'm saying? So that's what y'all guys have to understand, that you cannot, and again, you can always tell by some of these comments, it's like Zeke said, it just makes them feel very ignorant because they just don't know any better. They just don't know any better. It's kind of like the comment when guys are like, oh, my birds can compete anywhere, but they never been anywhere. You see what I'm saying? How do you know your birds can compete anywhere when they never competed in multiple different places? Or you hear guys say, "Oh man, my birds can compete in any weapon," but they really never competed in any weapon. I'm talking about on a majority. You might have two, three, four of them that has, or five of them that has, but over your lifespan, you done had 1,000 birds, and three of them you tried it with, and all of a sudden now you saying, "Oh, all of them can compete in any weapon." See, these are the kind of comments. Um, these are the kind of comments that again it makes a lot of people not post a lot of things, not share a lot of things, and not comment on a lot of things because you have individuals and some of them don't even own foul at all. Some of them is not even engulfed in the trenches of the sport, but they make these kind of comments, and a lot of times it just shows that they're lacking education in at least on that topic. So um, in traveling, I see so many different things, and I always tell this to guys that when I visit their farm and I see them doing stuff, and they always say, "Hey, man, I know you probably guys probably don't do this in other places that you've been, but this works for me." And I always tell them, every time somebody tell me something won't work, I go to a farm and somebody doing it and it's working. That's what I have learned from experience. Through many years of experience, I mean, through many travels, because I ain't been in this sport 20, 30 years. I didn't eat nachos at the Bayou Club and stuff like that. But through all of my travels, every time I hear somebody say that something will not work, I go to somebody's place and they're doing it and it's working. Every time I hear somebody say, oh, a bird has to be like this in order to perform, I see a bird not like that and perform. You know what I mean? I give you a prime example. I hear guys say, oh man, the bird got to be bone empty to show good. That's not true, because I've seen birds that poop inside of there, inside. So they obviously wasn't bone empty, but they had a phenomenal performance. Then I seen ones that were, from me, considered as closest to empty as possible, that had a great performance. And then I seen ones that's bone that had horrible performance. So, individuals have to understand, just eliminate the ego. Just get rid of your ego and understand that, just be a student of the game. I don't think enough people are okay with being a student of the game. I think too many people want to be a teacher of the game, a mentor of the game. I don't think enough people are okay with being a student of the game. And the reason why I say that, and it's just not even in this sport, but the reason why I say that is because many are not humble enough to take advice from other people. Many are not humble enough to accept the fact that there's another way to do something other than the way that they have done it. Right? And you grow so much faster with the more exposure you have outside of your comfort zone. You grow faster. You cannot equate time with wisdom. Guys say, oh, as you grow older, you go wiser. Not everybody. Because there's a such saying as saying an old fool used to be a young fool. So don't never equate time with experience, or time with wisdom, or time with knowledge. And I say that because you have guys that have been doing stuff 20 years, and they have stayed in a small circle and have did things for 20 years, one or two particular ways. Then you have guys who's been doing it for 10 years, but have done it and seen it done 25 different ways. So you're saying the guy that's been in it for 10 years, that have seen stuff and done stuff 25 different ways, is less experienced than a guy who's been in the game 20 years, but been in a small circle and have kind of done things the same way over those 20 years, because he said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's really think about what I'm saying, right? So that is kind of what that's the whole purpose of me kind of sharing this, because I seen a video today about Nick Saban, I guess the Alabama football coach that retired. I watched a examination with him, and he said that the reason why he left the sport, because he didn't feel as though the sport was developing the players. He felt as though that everything now was just only about money, and him and his wife would always have the new recruits over his house on Sunday for breakfast. And he said that his wife came to him, and I'll post it. I screen recorded it. I'll post a video. And he said his wife came to him and said, what are we doing this for? He said, well, what do you mean? He said, a lot of these new recruits and their parents don't care about the development of their child, don't care about the development as a player. All they're caring about is how much they're going to get paid. So he said that's why he just retired, because it came out of nowhere. So that is something that I think that it's very difficult to develop the next generation if our egos are too big, because we feel as though when we're mentoring somebody that they have to listen to everything that we say word for word, or they're being hard-headed, they don't want to listen, they too self-entitled, they know everything. No, it's not that they don't know it. A good mentor is not going to give you the answer. He's just going to point you in the direction of where to find the answer, right? And that's what I do. When individuals contact me about a question that we have covered in an interview, I reply back with the interview. I don't reply back with the answer. And I talked about this the day before yesterday, with a lot of these breeders out here getting bombarded with a lot of questions that they have already covered in videos that they have made. I told one of them, why are you constantly responding back with the answer if you already covered that in the video? Why don't you respond back to that message with a copy of the video and allow that person to invest time and invest in their self by watching a whole video to get the answer? Because in the process of watching a whole video, they may learn something that they didn't go to the video for. And that goes back to me saying that I always encourage guys, new, young, old, veterans, or whatever, if you can, when purchasing fowl, try to visit the farm. Why? Because you will come across questions and things that you would never have came across or even thought about or even seen if all your communication was through some form of media. So again, I can't say it enough. And Nick Saban is I resonated with that interview that he had done so much because that is something that is challenging our sport is the development of the next generation. And the present generation is taking zero responsibility for the next generation, which the present generation is raising the next generation. You see what I'm saying? We're the generation prior. These individuals are our children or our grandchildren. So we got to take some sense of responsibility in it. But it just always confuses me when an individual run into two or three newer generation individuals that don't appreciate the help or the information that they're sharing. So they shut it down from everybody. I'm not sharing anything because, I'm not sharing anything because when I try to share stuff, these guys think they know everything. They don't listen. I ask them, well, how many people have you tried that with? How many people have you tried that with? 2, 3, 5, 10? I bet you haven't tried it with 100 people. I bet you haven't tried it with 100 people. So you making your determination on a whole generation from the 5, 10, or 15 bad experiences that you have had, right? Now, let me give you what I use to kind of make my determination. When I look at our stats on YouTube, and we're looking at 10, 20, 30,000 hours a month watch time. And I'm looking at, because in YouTube, they break it all down. When I'm looking at the age bracket of the age bracket of 25 to 34 is the largest group consuming our content, it's hard for me to believe that the younger generation don't want to learn. I got proof. I got statistics. I got facts. That is a overview of thousands of individuals from all over the world. The biggest consumer of our content is the ages of 25 to 34. Not 50s, not in their 60s, not in their 70s, 25 to 34. So when somebody tell me the younger generation don't want to learn, I got facts to prove otherwise. Let's compare stats. You showed me the 15 people that you tried it with that didn't value or appreciate the knowledge that you're trying to share with them. And then I'll show you thousands that's consuming thousands upon thousands of hours of the interviews every single day, every single month, I mean. You see what I'm saying? That's why I have a different perspective on it. It's not like I'm trying to disagree with the individual. And the reason why I'm covering this topic is because it was one of the comments, multiple comments in that post that I put up. Guys are saying, well, you can't really teach them anything. They know everything. That's not true. That's not true. Maybe through your experience, it's your truth, but it's not a whole generational truth. And our stats just from YouTube alone proves beyond a reasonable doubt the largest consumer of our content is the ages 25 to 34. And I would consider 25, 26, 27 the younger generation. I'll consider 34 the younger generation. But the largest consumer of our content is not people in their 60s, in their 50s, in their 70s. They're not the largest consumer. You see what I'm saying? So that just kind of want to share that with you. Yep, exactly. Let me share this with Larry David. Larry David, what just pretty much confirms what I have data. I have data and stats to back it up. Larry just confirmed it. The younger generation is very hungry to learn. The older generation think everything is top secret. Now, what he's saying, if you go back to the interviews that we have done, listen to those guests of how they were treated when they came into the sport. That's why many of those guests come onto the show, not to sell foul or anything like that. They come onto the show to try to right a wrong. The older generation treated them with giving them bad information, not giving them information at all, not selling them any good foul. These are not my words. If you watch all these interviews, they all are saying the same identical thing. So ask yourself, are we doing the same thing that the older generation did to those younger generations? Are we continuing the same pattern? Think about it. Think about it. Are we continuing the same pattern? Watch the interviews. Listen to James Sylvester, Bobby Rogers, Mark Smut. Listen to Luke Gerard. Listen to all these guys. And they'll all tell you when they was coming into the sport, nobody wanted to share any information with them. Nobody wanted to sell them good foul. People would tell them bad information. Think about that. Are we still doing that same identical thing today of what they were going through in the 70s and the 80s? But yet, we're trying to say we're better. We're doing the same identical thing. We're doing the same identical thing. We're treating everything like it's some type of secret. You know, the only way we're gonna win is we gotta withhold information. And it's not true. It's not true. So, that is just kind of what I wanted to share with that. Y'all guys have a lot of great comments coming in. Have a lot of great comments coming in. Yeah, this is a great one too. This is a good one. Jay, wonderful. Yeah, I find that as well in a lot of cases. I seen a post. Uh, I think it was today, yesterday, or something that he talked about how the sport is no longer all about the foul. It's about guys making money, whatever the case is. I think uh, that is as true today as it was back then. Um, but I believe the difference between now and back then is back then the pits were the tool of advertisement, right? Your performance was the advertisement. Your burst performance was the advertisement. Today, phones, apps, videos, and pictures are the form of advertisement. And it's for particular reasons as well, because obviously things are not legal in all the places like they were back then, right? But so that's one of the biggest differences as well, and that makes a lot of individuals more vulnerable than they were back then. Now a lot of individuals are getting scammed. They're sending money to different places. I mean, to the wrong. Well, I ain't gonna say to the wrong people, but it's not the people that they thought they were sending it to. So a lot of people getting scammed and stuff like that, and it's happening. I don't know. I'm sure people were getting scammed back in the day, but it wasn't in the same form of getting scammed. Now things are getting so out of control because everybody with all these forms of media can portray to be a superhero and not actually even be involved in game foul. You know what I mean? And that's neither here nor there. So it is what it is. Yes, yes. Let me share something. There's a comment that came in. This is something that occurs. Ashley says that if I can touch on the untrimmed bull stag with natural spurs, they are exclusively imitation only and always a three bird event. That is true. that occurs, it is definitely the true one of the true examples of the foundation of how this sport was built. Strictly gentleman sport. Strictly gentlemen. Their attire, their behavior, their purpose is to me very satisfying, and it's a different world when you go to these imitation only, because it's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. So actually, yes, that does occur. I think that is one of the foundations of what this sport was built on. And again, it goes back to what I said before in a prior video of how there's so many greats out here that have very little to no social media presence. There's a lot of things that go on that's not presented on social media, and those exclusive events, they occur. Um, Many don't even know about it, but the purpose of those events is not to use as marketing tools. You see what I'm saying? Their egos is not sitting on their shoulders. So that is true. Um Jo- Josh, you exactly. Hey, I agree with you 100%. I talked about that earlier as well. Um, it's just the fact that, like I said earlier, you cannot equate wisdom, knowledge, and experience with age. I learned growing up, there's a term that we say, a old fool used to be a young fool who never learned, right? So, you can't equate just because somebody has not been in a sport that there's no value in what they're saying. And it is value in what they're saying. They can know something because you never know who that young person was taught that particular thing by. It can be a 15-year-old that has been taught something by a guy who's been doing it 20, 30 years, or that's a guy that's been very successful in its own right. So you cannot equate age with wisdom, or age automatically with experience. You know what I mean? Just because somebody's 25, don't think that they can't do anything better than you, and don't think that they may not know something that you do not know. And that's where that ego thing comes in, and that's where that clash of generations are. I think many times people get the wrong uh, uh, understanding of what a mentor is. A mentor is not there to give you all these answers to every one of your questions. A mentor there, a mentor is there is to point you in a direction to gain the answer. And hopefully you'll pick up some more knowledge on the path, on that journey to getting your answer. That's why I always say, and I tell people, and again, it will never change. Somebody post up a question, and I'll go back to this. Why is my hen not laying? Because that is a question that I have seen post the beginning of every single breeding season since I've been in this sport, right? Guys who jump into the comment section without asking any backstory. You know what I mean? Like, they're not asking any backstory. Just imagine you walked into the doctor's office, and you tell a doctor, I got a headache. And the doctor just pull out a thing and say, well, let me write you a prescription. Think about that. Think about that. When do you ever go to the doctor and you tell a doctor, I got a back pain, or I got a headache, or whatever your symptoms is, and they say, oh, you do? Oh, let me write you a prescription. They don't. They don't. They check your temperature. You didn't go in there and say you had a fever, but they still check your temperature. You didn't say you had chest pains, but they still listen to your heart. You didn't tell them you couldn't breathe, but they still listen to your lungs. Why? Why? But if I post on these media platforms, hey, my hen is not laying, nobody asks any backstory. Nobody asks what you've been feeding her. Is she overweight? Do you know how to determine if she's overweight? Are you using lights? What kind of climate you live in? how old she is. Nobody asks any of no backstory. Everybody just pull out the pad and start subscribing. Feed her layer pellets. That's all you need. Feed her this. That's all you need. Turn on the lights. That's all you need. Everything. That's all you need. That's all you need. That's all you need. Everybody got the answer with no backstory. But yet, if that same individual went to the doctor and he told the doctor they have a headache, and the doctor said, well, let me check your temperature. He don't tell the doctor, no, don't check my temperature because I came in here for a headache. He let the doctor check the backstory before he can kind of start diagnosing what's wrong with him. And that same individual will get on media and prescribe something without knowing the backstory. Yeah, let me pull this up. This is a good one too. Let me pull this one up. This is a good one too. Um, okay. Okay, Sean said, Jim, when you win a derby, do you think you had them right? And then when you lose the next derby, did you have them off? That's a great question, Sean. And I actually have talked about this many times. And this is the question that I used to ask about that in the same, pretty much same fashion. I used to ask, because I always say this is one of the only sports that guys use show day to practice. Every other sport, they have practice and then they have show day. In this sport, people practicing new stuff on the day they showing. I don't understand that. But goes back to what he's saying. Sean says that, when you win, do you think you had them right? And when you lose, do you think you had them off? My answer is no. Why do I say that? Because it goes back to the videos that we talk about this pointing thing, pointing. If he's not pointed right, he's not going to win. He's not going to show good. I've seen 100,000 times, 1,000 times. That is not true. That is not true. The average bird going in there ain't even on point. Ain't even on point. Donnie French talks about this in his interview. And again, he's been in it 3 times longer than I have, right? And anybody that has been in the trenches know, if you've been in this sport long enough, you have won when you know that bird wasn't right. You have a loss when you felt that bird was right. That's a fact. If outside of somebody who's being a luminary cocker, I'm talking about a real cock, you know that you have won even when your bird was off. I know somebody won and he said the bird wasn't right, but he still won. And he won in good fashion. But he knew that bird wasn't right. So when somebody tell me your bird got to be on point, you got to be no, that is the goal. That is the goal. The goal is to have them as right as possible. That's the goal. But you telling me he only wins when he's completely on, that is a lie. That is not true. That's not true. It's not true. And if you think it's true, it's because you're not paying attention. So that's hopefully that answers your question, Sean. That's how I feel about it. That's how I've always felt about it. And I has made numerous videos about that same thing. I made a video about, and it's actually on a YouTube channel. It's pointing real. It's pointing real. Because there's a lot of keeps, pointing methods, DVDs, books, and all that. I think all of them have some value to it. So I don't criticize any of it. I don't criticize the individuals who's writing it. I'm not criticizing any of the content. I think all that stuff has some value. You take what you can get out of it and not discard the rest. Just leave the rest sitting on the sideline. That's it. But I think all of it has some value. What I don't like is when somebody try to say, in order for you to get them right, this is the only way to do it. There is no only way. There is no only way. And all wins and all losses are not equal, period. Are not equal. So that's the only thing I don't like when it comes to that. Telling these people that if he ain't on point, he ain't gonna win. That's a bald-faced lie. That's a bald-faced lie. Period. Because if you have never won when your birds was not on, you're lacking something. Because everybody has won, has had a win when a bird wasn't 100%. If you show enough, if you literally have shown in the past, or if you're in a legal country, we all have had a win when we know the birds were not 100% on. We have all had a win when the birds were empty. We have all had a win when the birds had feed in them. I have had wins with food still in the crop, still in their crop. I have had wins. So when guys tell me a bird can't win unless he bone empty, that's a lie. That's a lie. That might be your experience, but that is not universal. That's not universal. Period. It's not universal. Birds have one sick. Birds have one with worms in them. Birds have one that has only ate corn all their whole entire life. Birds have one that hasn't been on point. Birds have one with food in them. Come on now. If you've been doing this long enough back in the legal days and stuff like that, you know a lot of stuff that's being put out there is not universally true. Period. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Alejandro, this is exactly right. Alejandro says nothing like going out there and doing it. Exactly. None of this media can ever replace literally doing it. None of it. None of it can ever replace it. And I don't care, what you believe, but none of it could replace it. It just can't. It literally just can't. And don't portray like it can because it can't. Um, that's right. Here's what Jay is saying. Jay said boxers, plenty boxers win, find a way to win even when they're not on point. That's the same thing with roosters. If you've been doing this long enough, a lot of the stuff. I seen a funny post today, and I was going to share a funny quote that another rooster cocker shared. He said that nonsense will make you famous, but not relevant. That's exactly right. You know what I mean? Like you can become famous talking nonsense. And usually the ones talking nonsense are always more famous than the ones that's relevant. You know what I mean? Just think about it. Haters are more famous than relevant people. Trolls become more famous than relevant people. Okay, let me read this comment. Ashley, I don't think I know you going out now, but Ashley, I don't. You must not have been following me long enough, and I'm just going to leave this comment right here because I think that you and I, well, not you and I think that you're getting just a snapshot of my content and making a full judgment of me. I have said many times in interviews and in many videos, the smaller breeders are the backbone of the sport. I don't know what this concept is of guys thinking I only well, it ain't many, it's just a small group. Guys thinking that I only focus on big farms or stuff like that. That's not true. That's definitely not true. I have interviewed guys with more guys with smaller farms than large farms, right? But actually, this is another reply. A lot of times the newer guys don't want to listen to a guy unless they're so-called famous. I have gotten this reply. Oh, who is that guy you interviewing? I never heard of him. And I'm like, well, whoever heard of you? It does not mean that this guy can't bring any value because you never heard of him. So Ashley, I think you kind of I'm not skipping over your question, um, but I think maybe you have a misunderstanding of me. But that's something that is completely up to you. But if you take the time to watch my interviews, not just the interviews, but watch my videos, you'll get a better understanding of me. Because based on the comments that you have been making all night, to me, I think there's a disconnect in what I represent and what your perception of me is. But it's your job, not my job, to convince you that I'm something. You have your own perception. So I'll leave that there. This is exactly right. Josh, you're exactly right. That's why I say all wins and all losses are not the same. All wins and all losses are not the same. And it go back to what I said earlier when guys were saying, oh, if my birds was that close together, they'll be fighting through the fence. You know what? Dunhills fight through the fence. That doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. All wins and losses are not the same. And that's, I think, is so underrated because guys just be like, put the W, put the W, put the W on it. Long as they put the W. And in a lot of cases, the bird ain't even putting the W on the wall. It's the handler. Y'all ever think about that? That's a whole nother topic. We'll talk about that on a whole nother video about how those W's on the wall are not all a result of the foul. A lot of those W's on the wall came from the experience of a handler. So we'll talk about that in another video. Um, Let me just give me a second and I'll roll through some of these comments. And it's some great comments coming in. It's some great comments coming in. Uh, Let me put this one up from Zeke. Again, Zeke said, great lines. Get rid of ego, open your mind, and take the time to learn and educate yourself. Totally agree. No one is perfect, and you can always learn something. Exactly. I learned from guys who have been in the game for 60 years, and I have from guys who just started. Time doesn't equate knowledge. I know a lot of people who have been doing the same job their whole life and still are not doing a good job. That's exactly right. And that's in and out of game foul. Like I talked about earlier, can't equate time with experience. Just because somebody be doing something for 40 years, don't mean they're more knowledgeable than somebody who's been doing it for 10. They can have two totally different exposures, two different journeys, two different levels of experiences, all that kind of stuff, all of that. So I think again, uh, there's guys out there. It seems like the most vocal ones are absolute in their beliefs and feel as though that they have the answers because they've been doing it long enough. But I think the downside is they think not that they have the answer, but they feel as though it's the only answer, and they don't say it's the only answer. They just act like it's the only answer. So that is just something that um, that individuals should hopefully just again just keep an open mind. Yeah, just keep an open mind. I'm just yes, yes. I'm just scrolling through these comments. It's a lot of comments in here. Yep. This is Robert Orr. What's up, brother? Roberts is from Ireland. But Robert says that when foul is pitted in any show and they stand and look at each other, I think this down to being used to either them being on tie courts or standing next to each other in pins and realizing that they can't get to each other. Um, where roosters that is raised in pens that don't see each other and rush into each other. Robert, that makes a lot of sense as well, and that's what I kind of talked about Puerto Rican birds being raised up with that 4 to 6 inches gap between them. They realize at a young age, a younger age, that they can't get to that other rooster. That is the reason why. If you take a bird off a tie cord who's never been in a pen, and then you put him in a pen with a 4-inch gap between them, most likely they are going to try to fight through the pen. But if you take something that's been in a pen at 5 months old, 4 months old, before they got really turned up, and then they spend 4 or 5 days realizing they can't get to that rooster, then that's dumb. I mean, that's done. You know what I mean? Like these chickens is not as stupid as people think. All it is, and it's going to be a matter of time where they realize they cannot get to the other rooster. It's the same thing like having dogs on chains outside. They realize after they hit that chain enough, they can't get to the other dog. So I don't understand why people are so amazed or so confused of how roosters was in a cage and they wasn't trying to kill each other through the cage. Again, the more exposure you have, the better understanding you have of other cultures, other places, and other things don't seem shocking to you. But the less you see, the more things seem shocking. But the more you see, the less things seem shocking, if that makes sense, right? Um, Josh, what topic is that you think you love? Uh, that's right. Let's talk about Mikey. Mikey said everyone has their own theory on how to do the 14-day keep and appointing. Also, it's your rooster and your money. Exactly right. It's your time, it's your money, it's your birds. Do whatever you want. And like I say, all of these keeps, all of these pointing methods, the old school veterans information, the word of mouth, all that kind of stuff has value in it. But as a human being, you got the ability to extract the stuff that's valuable to you and not use the rest. And it's not even about common sense, it's about what fits your situation. But be wary of the guys who are prescribing solutions without even asking the symptoms. And yeah, you might not believe, you might just totally disagree with me, but you do it every time you go to the doctor's office. You never tell the doctor, don't take my temperature, don't listen to my heart, don't listen to my breathing because I came in here with back pains. You never tell a doctor that. You are 100% okay with the doctor checking, things outside of why you came in there before he prescribed you a diagnosis. So I don't care how long you've been in this sport, be careful about taking prescriptions from individuals who ask nothing about the backstory. Nothing. And understand that that's all ego. That's all that this is. You're not asking one backstory at all, one backstory. And I keep going back to this hen not lane. You're like, well, that you beat that dead horse. How is that? How am I beating a dead horse when it's asked every single season? You know what I mean? It's asked every single season. So it's many different reasons a hen may not be lame. So I would think you should ask questions before you prescribe a solution. That's it. Right? And if you have been in this sport long enough and you have talked to enough people, you have experienced it enough, you know it's very little universal anything. It's so many variables in these foul that has things to do outside of just the foul itself. The environment, the dirt, the access to particular feed, the caretaker's work schedule. Is so many, the if they're on tie cords, pins, fly pins, if they're on gravel, they're on dirt, what kind of dirt, what part of the country they're in, what part of the world that they in. It's so many different variables. And that's why I don't understand how guys prescribe stuff without even asking anything, any backstory. Any backstory. Um, oh, the topic about handling. Yeah, that's a topic that I would love to talk about, and we'll do that in another video. Is that topic about handling? Jay said, "How long do they rest Spanish foul?" This is a conversation that I had during my event. I was talking to individuals that were not from Puerto Rico that came to Puerto Rico for the event, and they only compete here. Their foul is here. Their birds are raised here, but they only compete here. He was talking about how his new trainer, he didn't feel as though was resting his birds long enough. He said that we're getting different results this season, not just in the performance, but in the condition of the foul. And he said, I really had to talk to my trainer about it. And I said, again, trying to learn the backstory before I offer my opinion. I said, well, what is different? He's like, well, the birds are losing power after about 3 or 4 minutes. They're losing power. They're not kicking a lot. I said, well, what else? How are they recovering? Well, they're not really recovering well. I said, well, how they throughout the year do they seem strong? How are they doing their keep? I was asking all kinds of questions, all kinds of questions. And then I said, well, one of the things that I think it may be not absolute, but it may be. I said, I don't think he's resting them long enough. And I said, a lot of times that's a fear for any lesser experienced trainers, because I made the same mistake. Lesser experienced trainers, they tend not to rest their birds long enough because they're afraid that their bird is going to lose the gains that they have made throughout their keep. And he turned to me and said, that's exactly what I thought. And he said, and that's exactly what I was going to communicate to him. He didn't learn that from me. We just was thinking the same thing. I didn't teach him anything. He had already been thinking that. But by me saying that, after all the backstory and giving him a deep explanation of why I felt like that, he felt the same way. All I did was give him confirmation of what he was already thinking was probably what it was. And again, I had made that mistake before. But like I say, going back, I asked a lot of questions because you don't know why a bird is losing power. He could be overworked. He could be underworked. He could be over rested. He could be not rested enough. It can be, he can just be feeling bad. He can be having worms. His kidneys can be damaged. It can be a whole bunch of slew of things. But be aware of individuals giving you diagnosis without learning and without asking any backstory. That's all I'm saying. Um, yes, Randy, thank you very much, guys. Uh, Randy, thank you very much for that. Randy said if y'all guys can hit the like, subscribe button on the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. If y'all can share it, I would even appreciate it as well. I did a big video about 10 minutes ago about the memberships that we're offering now on our YouTube channel and our Spotify. I will continue posting that information up so y'all guys can see it. But yeah, Jarin, he asks, why do, and this is the crazy thing about this. You ask 20 people in Puerto Rico why they trim these birds, and they give you 20 different answers. That's the crazy part about it. Based on my understanding from talking to guys who still compete in today, that competed many, many, many years ago, before these coliseums were at the status level that they are now, many of the old timers have told me they have trimmed the fowl. It's a tradition. I say it's a tradition now. Somebody got on here and say, no, you're lying. I'm wrong. It's not a tradition. I don't debate with nobody. They can believe what they want to believe. I believe in what I want to believe. We're not having the same conversations with the same people. Now, I have talked to top level guys and got different answers. So basically, my understanding is came into the sport, they trimmed these fowl based on the weapons that they were using back then and the heat and the conditions that they were showing in. That's the conclusion that I have came up with. Right now, I think more today, it's more of a tradition because the weapons are different, and many of the coliseums here do have air conditioning. A guy debated with me today and said they don't have air conditioning. Okay, I just said okay. I go all over this island, east, west, north to the south. Most of the places I go in have some form of air conditioning. But again, I'm not debating with that individual. I'm wrong, he's right, whatever. So Jaron, that's kind of what I have came up with, because I get asked that question all the time. And I have talked to small breeders, medium breeders, old breeders, young breeders, top competitors, and it's all answers all over the place. Answers is all over the place. So that's the conclusion. That's the best way I can answer that question, based on all the information that I have collected from multiple different sources, multiple different levels, and multiple different years of being in this sport. So I'm not saying it's a fact, but that's my explanation to that answer. It's a fact. I can't say it. Okay, here it is right now. Miguel McMillan said he's been here, born and raised, Puerto Rican. He says, like I just said earlier, tradition and it's regulation by the department that's in charge of the game foul. It's a regulation now, but that regulation was based on a tradition that had been going on for five. They've been competing here on the island for five. They track it back 500 years. You see what I'm saying? So it's it's determined by the Department of Recreation and Galístico, which is the sport of cockfighting. There's a department here because the sport is ran by the government here in Puerto Rico. You know what I mean? It's ran by the government. So what he just said, is a tradition now, and now it's regulated by the sport department, which again, that regulation is a result of a tradition that had been in place 500 years. And again, if you look back 50, not even 500 years ago, but look back at the conditions that these birds competed in 50 years ago, there was no air conditioning. There was extreme heat. This island never gets cold. You see what I'm saying? So that's, again, the conclusion that I came up with of how it all started. Yep. This is another great question. Their game says that, is it true that the best birds are in the 1.6, the 1.9 is for lesser class birds? That's a great question. Now, let me explain to you, because I was here when I competed in the 1.9, because they used to have 1.6, 1.8, and 1.9. I have used all three of them. The large Coliseum, Isla Verde, they only allow 1.6. All the other Coliseums allow 1.6, 1.8, and 1.9. Now, to answer your question, because this was a big debate with the Department of Recreation, they voted all over the island about eliminating the 1.8s and the 1.9s and sticking to the 1.6. From my understanding of the translations of the documents that they had put out, was they felt that the 1.8 and 1.6 degraded the quality of the foul. Puerto Ricans are very, very prideful people, very prideful people. And to them, the quality of foul is more valuable than a quick win. So they did this poll, and Miguel McMillan, you can chime in if I'm wrong. But again, I've been through this whole transition. I was here. I used to compete with those 1.8 and 1.9s. So I know, I was here. Through my understanding and my translation and communication with them, that was the reason why. So the guys who were winning with the 1.8s and the 1.9s, when they voted on it and they did decide, the recreation department, a commission decided that, okay, we made the final decision, it's all going to be 1.6s. Guys who were winning with the 1.8s and 1.9s had a very, very hard time. They had a very difficult time. Now, you can translate that however you want to translate it. But the individuals that were using 1.8s and 1.9s, they were having a very difficult time with using 1.6s. Translate it how you want to translate it. I'm not going, you know what I mean? They had to adjust. And because the foul are a reflection of the weapon and the rules. So once you change the rules and the weapons, you're going to have to change your selection process. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If the rules go from competing for 30 minutes and now you're competing for 12 minutes, you telling me your selection process is not going to change? You're going to tell me your keeps are not going to change? You're going to tell me your rest periods are not going to change? Everything's going to change. Now, if they say you're going for showing a Bautista, they're showing a long knife or a short knife, you going to tell me your selection process is not going to change? Of course it's going to change. So these foul are a reflection of the rules and the weapons. So I would figure if you change the weapon from a 1.9 to a 1.6, you're going to have to change something. Now, that's if you consistently competed in the 1.9. Not saying that your bird that was competing in the 1.9 couldn't win in the 1.6 and the 1.8, because they can. But there was particular families and breeders and everything that bred birds particularly for that 1.6. How do I know that? Because the guys that were winning in the 1.9, they caught hell when they eliminated that 1.9 and went down to a 1.6. The glorious part about that is by them competing with foul at a younger age. You know, these birds, these Spanish birds mature very early. So it don't take them 2 years, 2.5 years to determine if that brood pen produced something that they want. In 8 or 9 months, they're gonna already know if the brood pen produced what they needed. So they was able to flip over 2 generations in 2 years. So they was able to kind of get back on track within 3 years. Versus if it was somebody else and another breed, that would take them 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, take them 6 years to find out. You see what I'm saying? So again, dead game. I hope that answered your question, brother. Jared said, what is your take on why a bird becomes a man fighter? And do you personally breed or call them? There has been some very successful birds on this island that have been man fighters, and they have been great producers. I think that's all on an individual basis. Some people got zero tolerance for a man fighter. I have some tolerance for a man fighter. Not a lot, but I have some. If he's an excellent producer. Do I think it's a gene? In some instances, I think it is a gene. But do I also think man fighting could be a result of how these birds are handled? I think that is also a possibility as well. So I think it can be two. I think it can also be genetic, and then it could be a learned behavior based upon how they handle as well. So I think it can be both. Uh Macmillan, if you're still on, just let me know if I explain correctly. The one going from 1.6, 1.8, 1.9 by them changing it down to 1.6, if it made a difference. Yep. So, um, yep. Guys, it ain't many people on here, but I really enjoy hanging out with y'all guys. And guys, like I said, I just made a video about the memberships that we're offering on YouTube and Spotify. It's going to be 3 tiers. It's going to be a $4.99 a month tier, a $9.90 a month tier, a $24.99 a month tier. I'll be posting up more information about that. I did do a long video explaining all the difference. So if y'all guys want to go back to my page on Facebook, and I also did it on YouTube as well. Y'all guys can watch the video, and I go into details of why we're doing what we're doing, what the tiers offer. I think is completely affordable, regardless of where you at. If you own game foul, anybody can afford $9.99 a month. So yeah. Okay. So yeah. So Macmillan said that the way I explained the 1.6 to 1.8 and 1.9 was on point. So um, yeah, dead game. The 1.6 is everywhere in Puerto Rico because again, it's regulated by the government. So you're only allowed to use the weapons that the recreational department uh, regulates to use, deem to use, and nobody brings their weapons to the pit. All the weapons are supplied at the pit. So you're not bringing your own version of your 1.6. Every single person on the island is using the exact same tool. Now they have different makers, they have different brands, but they all 1.6. Now I'm not saying that you can't go deep in the mountains somewhere and find somebody using 1.8 and 1.9s. Yeah, you probably can find that out, just like you probably can find somebody illegally fighting birds in the mountain. It's not common, but it happens. You know what I mean? Yes, Dead Game. If you seen our Nandi interview, I will definitely be planning on making a trip to Colombia as well. It's many places I'll be going. Not at this present time, but I know definitely 100% I'll be going to the Philippines, Dominican Republic, Colombia, Peru, and I definitely be visiting Europe. All my travelers over there for sure, 100%. I'll be over there visiting the travelers in Manchester, in the UK, all of that. I definitely, like I say, look forward to God willing. I'll be to make those trips. Yep. Yes, that's exactly right. As Miguel says, only Plastic Bautista and 1.6. That's all that is all that's legally allowed on the island. I haven't really seen anybody using anything other than a 1.6. Um, because why not? I think they did it for a solid cause and a solid reason. You know what I mean? They did it for a solid cause and a solid reason. So, why not stay within the 1.6? I personally believe that the 1.6, I totally agree with the decision. First and foremost, I totally agree with the decision first. Why I agree with it? Let me give you the reason why I agree with the decision. The reason why I agree with the decision is because I believe that 1.6 exposes all the weaknesses in your program. Eliminate all that lucky shot and all that kind of, nonsense. I believe that 1.6 exposes all the weaknesses in your program. I think it exposes bad health. I think it exposes bad training. And I think it exposes bad genetics because it makes you earn those wins. That's what I believe. Now, don't take out of context and try to apply my feelings on that, applying to long knife and all that. We're not talking about any other weapon. I'm talking about here the plastic Bautista in Puerto Rico with the Puerto Rican foul. I'm not talking about any other breed of bird or family of bird or any other weapon in any other country. I'm just talking about Puerto Rico. I felt as though that shorter weapon exposes the weaknesses in your program. Um, and this is another thing. If it didn't expose the weaknesses in the program, then why did the guy showing a longer weapon have to make so many adjustments? You know what I mean? So um, it's just something, just something to think about. It's just something to think about. All right. So hopefully that answered your question. All righty, guys. I think that's about it. I've been on here an hour. Um, I've been on here an hour. Hopefully I answered y'all guys' questions. Again, guys, we go into a membership on our YouTube and Spotify with these interviews. If you watch my previous video, it's titled Memberships. I go in depth why we're doing what we're doing, what you can expect, the 3 tiers. We put a lot of thought into this. I explained over the last 6 years of doing these interviews what we have learned, and we're making these adjustments so we can become more effective. We can better serve the people that's actually coming to the platform for the education and not for opportunity just to critique. So yeah, I won't get no more into that, but that is all in that previous video that I done this evening. Um, yeah, it's all in the previous video that I done earlier. So guys, I hope I answered y'all guys' questions. I appreciate y'all guys hanging out with me tonight. I will be posting up some other videos and stuff that I have going on. I will be focused more on posting the content to the membership sites now, on YouTube. Very easy to join. Next to the subscribe button, it got join. You can hit the join button and boom, you can join. So yeah, I'll be focused on more creating and building content for that. We'll also continue to have free content. We'll have free lives and stuff like that. But hopefully y'all guys will come on over. Y'all join it. You can join as little as $4.99 a month. I mean, nobody can say they can't afford it. So let's see what happens. Hopefully, I'll see y'all guys over there. I enjoy hanging out with y'all guys tonight. Y'all guys have a great night, and I will talk to y'all guys on the next live. Have a good evening.